We're rolling. Sophie, how was it working on Rec and working with Doug as a director?
Yeah, it was such a pleasure to work on Rec, and working with Douglas as director was also really amazing. He's super duper helpful about giving notes, but he also kind of lets me do my thing, which I really appreciate as an actor. So would love to work with him again in the future.
Awesome.
Have you ever heard of a writer by the name of Douglas Malin?
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him.
No.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him.
So what happened? How'd I get here? Cold, old, and all alone? An anonymous literary failure? Nary a pot to piss in? Creditors and the IRS breathing down my neck? It's a good question, but the answer's a little complicated. You got a minute?
Coming out of the chute, I was 2 days late. You see, November 24th, 1963, the day I was born, is the day Jack Ruby shot and killed Lee Harvey Oswald. I've always lamented that I wasn't born 2 days earlier, on November 22nd, the day Oswald shot Kennedy. 'Cause let's face it, it's a much better storyline. And now for a brief and boring stroll down memory lane. That's me and my three sisters, Madeline, Mary, and Judy. Somewhere on Long Island, 1,000,000 years ago. And that's my mom. And that's my psycho dad. And that's our dog Tyrone. And that's me at PS 106 in the Bronx. I'm in there somewhere. That's me at my Holy Communion. I was pretending I was a cowboy at the rodeo. When my psycho dad saw what I was doing, he slapped the living shit out of me. I think because we were in front of a church. Isn't that what any parent would do? This is the entrance to PS 106. Some really fucked up shit happened there. Things that should never, ever happen to a child. Things that have made me, at least in my view, one hell of a fucking writer. I describe being sexually abused by my grandfather and by an older boy in my novels Fact and Fiction and Jerk Off. What a surprise. Sex addiction became the driving force in my life as an adult. By the time puberty rolled around, we moved to Riverdale, which is pretty much the French Riviera of the Bronx. I mean, the Hudson River's a stone's throw away. This is PS 81, the school I went to there. It was at PS 81 that I fell in love for the very first time. No, not with Miss Matos. Not with Helen from science class. Not with Elizabeth Lillywhite. And not with Jessica Spadaccini either. I fell in love with the Yankees. George and Billy. Billy and Reggie. Louisiana Lightning. Mick the Quick. Bucky Dent, Greg Nettles, Chris Chambliss, Willie Randolph, The Goose, Sweet Lou, Catfish Hunter, Sparky Lyle, and the Captain, Thurman Munson. God rest his soul. This story would be incomplete if it didn't include what my psycho dad did to me on my 15th birthday. I was working at a pet store on South Broadway for $1 an hour. My psycho dad had already told me that he was taking me to get laid for my birthday. I was terrified. I didn't want to get laid. I wasn't even looking at Playboy yet. I hoped and prayed that he wouldn't show up. But he did, and what happened next was one of the most horrific experiences of my life. Time to go home. No sign of my psycho dad, thank God. I walk out onto South Broadway, and there he is. He slapped me in my face, kicked me in my ass, and started beating the living shit out of me, right there on South Broadway. All because of something I said to my sister's friend Teresa at Thanksgiving dinner the night before. Teresa was always very flirtatious with me. She lived in 6C, the party dorm upstairs that a bunch of college kids had taken over. One day, I wandered into 6C, and there was Teresa, laying topless on the bed. There was no one else there, just me and her. I stood there in shock. I'd never seen a topless girl before. Teresa appeared to be sleeping. At least her eyes were closed. I was so innocent that I thought I could get in trouble for seeing Teresa's breasts. So I quietly left and never said a word. But yeah, me and Teresa were always flirting and teasing one another. What it was I said, I have no idea. But obviously nothing warrants beating the living shit out of your son on his 15th birthday. But that's only half the story. Later that night, I was home playing Atari, all the rage in 1978. My psycho dad knocked on the door, and I let him in as if nothing had ever happened. He asked me how much money I got for my birthday. Actually, I think the total was closer to 70. A lot of money for a 15-year-old in 1978. My psycho dad asked me if I wanted to bet it on a game of Atari. I don't think I agreed out of fear. I wanted his approval. I wanted his love, even though just hours earlier he'd beaten the living shit out of me, on my birthday no less. My dad won the game, took my money, and left. By 1979, my mom quit her job as my psycho dad's punching bag and moved me and my sisters to a roach-infested shithole in Yonkers, pictured here. We nicknamed the place the Agramonte Hilton after the slumlord scumbag landlord who owned the place. Looking back, I now see 1979 as one of the pivotal years of my life. In 1979, I discovered The Clash, and Blondie, and The Police, and the Ramones, and life as I knew it would never be the same. In 79, alcohol and weed became an everyday thing. In 79, I met Luann Fernald, Miss June. Little did I know that I was embarking upon a lifelong addiction to porn. And in 1979, 3,000 miles away, the woman who would disfigure my soul was born. 1980 was a total shit show. The Iranian hostage crisis lingered on with no end in sight. George Brett, Kansas City's one-man wrecking crew, knocked the Yankees out of the playoffs. And John Lennon was murdered. Thousands assembled outside the Dakota that night, and I was one of them. In 1981, I got expelled from Yonkers Prep, a new-aged high school designed for fuck-ups like me. They said they saw me selling weed, and I tried to explain. I wasn't selling it, I was buying it. In 1981, just to get the hell out of Yonkers, I joined the Navy. And something unbelievably fucked up happened. At our boot camp graduation celebration at the Ambassador Hotel in Milwaukee, I walked into the men's room. A man came up from behind me, put a gun to my head, shoved me into a bathroom stall where another sailor was waiting. The gunman threatened to kill us both if we made a sound, robbed us, and then vanished. Later that night, still at the Ambassador Hotel with my company, some blonde-haired guy came up to me and asked me to go back to his place with him. Many years later, when I saw Jeffrey Dahmer's face for the first time, I flashed back to that night at the Ambassador. Was that guy Jeffrey Dahmer? But wait, it gets weirder. During research for this segment of the documentary, I discovered that Jeffrey Dahmer killed his first victim at the Ambassador Hotel. After sending me to a boot camp graduation party where I was robbed at gunpoint and hit on by a serial killer, the Navy sent me to San Diego to learn how to become a radio man. In San Diego, I went with some other sailors to this place where strangers meet to have sex. I just wanted to lose my virginity, which I did, and what a disgusting experience it was. Thank God I didn't catch anything. Like every other sailor stationed in San Diego, I visited Tijuana and met some of the locals. There I was, just 18 years old, getting wasted every night, playing Russian roulette with my life, oblivious to the dangers all around me. Thank you, God, for seeing me through it all. It wasn't all bad. I got to go to Jack Murphy Stadium and see the San Diego Padres play the Philadelphia Phillies. Mike Schmidt hit a homer, but the Padres won. I spent my next 18 months here at the Norfolk Naval Base. Unfortunately, for teenage alcoholics like me, the drinking age in Virginia was 21. But the drinking age on the naval base was 18, and I became a fixture at the Windjammer, where I could get hammered every night on 50-cent rum and cokes. At the commissary, I discovered Iron City beer, brewed and bottled in Pittsburgh, PA. Around that time, a coworker turned me on to speed, and what a surprise, I was soon hooked. Things got really dark when Kim Hartford, a hard-working, hard-partying coworker, was murdered by her husband, Rick. Kim and Rick were whacked out on drugs and alcohol like everyone else in my circle at that time, and I can't help but attribute, at least to some extent, the role of drugs and alcohol in this tragedy. God rest your soul, Kim. Next stop, the USS Raleigh. More beer, more booze, and more buds. Oh yeah, and these too. Something unbelievably disgusting happened. The Raleigh became the flagship of the battle group. That just meant the highest ranking officer decided to visit our ship. A chain gang was formed to transfer all his stuff. A cardboard box was being passed along. It fell and hit the ground, and bestiality porn magazines spilled out. We put the magazines back in the box, taped it up, and passed it along. That's me, RM3 Malin. On my way to Amsterdam. Girls in the window. Hash cafes. Look at that menu. More girls in the window. And guess who we saw paying the girls in the window a visit? Chaplain Watson, dressed in a fedora and trench coat. Don't worry, Chaplain Watson. Your secret's safe with me. On our way back from the North Atlantic, Stewart, this gay sailor, got drunk and blew in my ear. I shoved him away, but didn't report it. A day or two later, Stewart tried to give Hanshofer, this tough-as-nails kid from Pennsylvania, a handjob in his sleep. Hanshofer woke up and beat the living shit out of Stewart. Then Stewart disappeared. It was feared he jumped overboard. Captain Triplett ordered a thorough search of the ship, and Stewart was eventually found in a crawl space somewhere in the lower decks. The scuttlebutt was that he was found unconscious with an empty bottle of vodka by his side. When we got back to Norfolk, I had just over a year to go in my enlistment. I hopped on a Piedmont Airlines flight to New York. Piedmont was like the Spirit Airlines of the 80s. You could fly from Norfolk to New York City round trip for just $49. My mom and dad, who hadn't seen each other or spoken to each other in decades, agreed to bury the hatchet for just one night and meet me at a restaurant in Midtown Manhattan. Then, crack entered the picture. My wastoid friends, Gary and Dave, picked me up at the airport. I wrote about what happened next in my novel Jerk Off. Try this, sailor, Gary said as he passed me back a crystal clear pipe. Cool, I answered, thinking I was about to smoke some weed. Man, I was hooked from the very first hit. Pure, immediate nirvana. Suffice it to say, I never saw my parents that night. Back to the Raleigh. completely destroyed, totally broke, and only wanting more. Williams was from Harlem. He was hooked too. He told me about a spot on 125th in Amsterdam. As soon as payday came, Piedmont, LaGuardia, Harlem, Rock, LaGuardia, Piedmont, the Raleigh, payday, Piedmont, LaGuardia, Harlem, Rock. And then one day, I just didn't go back. The day before I would have been classified a deserter, I did go back to the Raleigh. My punishment? Where do I start? For the next 45 days, I performed the most menial, the most degrading tasks imaginable. But there in the bowels of the Raleigh, I met Clark and Jesse, two born-again Christians, hell-bent on my salvation. Clark and Jesse showered me with scripture, and kindness too. And though at the time they were just two annoying Jesus freaks to me, I now see them as living proof of God's endless grace in my life. On day 46, Piedmont, LaGuardia, Harlem, Rock. But this time, when I went back to the Raleigh, I was served with an other than honorable discharge. All these years later, it's still difficult to admit that at my captain's mast, I cried like a baby. After all that, there I was, back in Yonkers, sleeping on my sister Mary's couch. I got a job at Seatown, the graveyard shift, stocking shelves. One night, I got caught in the freezer, stuffing a pack of frozen steaks down my pants. But I wasn't stealing them. I was going to pay for them on payday. Think that's pathetic? Then I snuck into my sister Madeline's apartment while she was at work. I borrowed her penny jar, went down to the bodega, and got not one, not two, not three, but four 40-ounce bottles of Ballantine Ale. Ballantine Ale. Good for what ails you. Let's just say Madeline wasn't pleased when she came home from work and found me unconscious on her couch. But at least I wasn't smoking crack. One morning, right around that time, I was totally hungover and crossing the street, heading to the bodega to get breakfast, when I got hit by a car and woke up in St. Joseph's Hospital. I didn't wake up thinking I had a drinking problem. I just thought, next time, maybe use the crosswalk. My psycho dad remarried and moved to New Jersey. This is Dave, my new stepbrother. We really hit it off. One day, me and Dave and a couple of other wastoids crammed ourselves in a truck and drove over the GW, the George Washington Bridge, to cop some rock in the 80s crack emporium, otherwise known as Washington Heights. Coming over the GW, we got into a road rage with some Puerto Ricans. Fuck you! No, fuck you! I still have no idea what precipitated it. We pulled up in front of a spot when suddenly the windshield exploded. A tire iron hit Sniff, the wastoid sitting next to me. What the fuck is happening? The passenger side door of the truck opened. It was those Puerto Ricans that were pulling me out. Dave floored the truck and sped away, fortunately with me still inside. We copped at a spot a couple of blocks away. No way we were going back to Jersey dry. Since we didn't have a windshield, we took the lower level back across the GW. My brother-in-law, Chuck, was a beeper salesman. Beepers were a major technological breakthrough, and in the early 80s, everybody wanted one. But Chuck had more than just beepers in his briefcase. Chuck was a Coke salesman, too. No, not this Coke. This Coke. Chuck offered me a job as his personal assistant. Since parking in the city was impossible, I'd wait inside the car while Chuck went in on sales calls and drive around the block if the parking pigs showed up. Chuck paid me in pizza and blow. One morning, we're driving down the FDR. The weather is terrible. The roads are slick as ice. Chuck loses control of the car. It bounces off a guardrail and comes to a spinning stop smack dab in the middle of the FDR drive. After sitting there in shock for a few seconds, Chuck reached for his briefcase, opened it up, pulled out a bag of Coke and said, "Hold this." Fuck no, I'm not holding your Coke for you, Chuck. Thank God we were able to drive away before the cops showed up, because that situation could have spiraled into something truly awful. Just before New Year's, me and Chuck and a couple of other local cokeheads were hanging out in his living room, working on a pile of crack. Suddenly, Jeannie, our next-door neighbor, appeared on the fire escape, screaming hysterically. We were all so fried, we just stared back at her, our brains totally numb. Jeannie pulled the fire escape window open. We could hear her now, screaming, "Fire! Fire! Fire!" The Christmas tree downstairs had caught fire. My 3-year-old niece Lauren came out of her room, wondering what was going on. The gravity of the situation was beginning to register. There was still a lot of crack left. What were we supposed to do? Leave it there? Jeannie grabbed Lauren, threw a coat on her, and carried her down the fire escape. Chuck gathered every speck of that rock, put it back in the plastic bag it came in, stuffed it in his pocket, and beelined for the fire escape. We could hear the sirens of the fire trucks approaching as we followed Chuck and the bag of crack down the fire escape. If it weren't for Jeannie, we might not have made it out alive. Dave had a friend named Bobby Stotts. Stotts was the lead singer in a hardcore band that played gigs in North Jersey and the city. One night we went to see him play in some dive bar in Alphabet City, the bombed-out wasteland that civilization had surrendered to the zombie outcasts who lived there. Compared to Alphabet City, Yonkers looked like fucking Scarsdale. After the gig, me and Dave and these 2 other guys got in his car. I didn't even know who these guys were, and I didn't know where we were going. I just knew it was fucking freezing. January in New York. So we're just sitting there, and the car's not moving. The engine's not even on. What the fuck is going on here? I'm fucking freezing. Turn the engine on. Let's get some fucking heat going. First I smell it, and then I see it. These fucking guys are shooting heroin. The smell was fucking nauseating. Dave and the 2 guys fixed, all with the same needle. Then they offered it to me. No thanks, was all I said. Then one day, something really strange happened. Me, Dave, and Gary met this guy Nick, a bartender in Newark, who had a little side hustle going, if you know what I mean. The weird thing was, the place was called Krug's. Krug is my mother's maiden name. So we're sitting there in Krug's, waiting for Nick's connection, and this thought washed over me. I'm never smoking crack again. Dave and Gary didn't believe me when I told them, but miraculously, I never smoked crack again. My sister Madeline got me a job interview at J. Walter Thompson, one of the city's top advertising agencies. Learning to type in the Navy was about to pay off. I really liked my coworkers, especially Maria, this Italian bombshell from Bensonhurst. The office was in Midtown, 466 Lexington Avenue, right next to Grand Central Station, and just a 10-minute walk to Show World, the Vatican of porn palaces, conveniently located in the heart of Times Square. Remember Luann, Miss June, 1979? She was my first, but she definitely was not my last. I don't remember the first time I wandered into Show World, which I dubbed the Vatican of Porn Palaces in my novel Sex Slaves. But it soon became a secret addiction, something that caused me great shame, something I could never ever tell anyone about. I'd go to work and see Cassie, or Jackie, or Jen, what a bitch she was, or Chrissy, or Helen, or Nina, or Steph, or Deb, or Janet, or Maria from Bensonhurst. And come lunchtime, I was hot-footing it across town to the Vatican in search of a reasonable facsimile of any of these girls. The place was a spiritual dungeon, but I could not help returning to it again and again and again. Visits to Show World became an everyday thing. I could no longer wait till noon. I started leaving earlier and earlier. Sometimes I'd go before work, and sometimes on the weekend I'd come, no pun intended, all the way from Yonkers. No matter how hard I tried, I could not get pornography off of my mind. It was driving me crazy, and the only answer I could find was to go back to Show World. I'm walking up 42nd Street, and you'll never guess who I ran into. Lucille Ball! She was coming out of a movie trailer, dressed like what we used to call in the 80s, a bag lady. At first, I didn't recognize her. I said, "Hi, Lucy," and she said, "Hi, sweetie." Those 10 seconds, I will never forget. I went on an acid run for my wastoid friends in Yonkers. I worked in Midtown. Grand Central Station was a block away. Just hop on the subway, get off at West 4th Street in the heart of Greenwich Village, and Washington Square Park was just minutes away. In the mid-'80s, Washington Square Park was an outdoor dope den. Weed, coke, hash, heroin, rock, speed, mescaline, quaaludes, acid, whatever condiment your dope fiend ass desired. So one day, after work, I took the subway down to the Village and copped a sheet of acid in Washington Square Park for my friends in Yonkers. On my way back to the subway, I decided to drop a tab or two or three or four. Then the strangest thing happened. I couldn't find the subway station. I was totally fucking lost. It was like I'd never been to the city before in my entire life. Panic set in. Where the fuck am I? Panic became terror. What if I'm lost for the rest of my life? I want this to end now. I'm wandering up this street. No fucking idea where I am. I hear some guy yell out to me, "I've got some nice white rocks for you, sweetie." Can't blame him. I was pretty cute. Then I looked up at a street sign, and the letters jumped off and bounced away. A Riverdale Express bus was passing by. That was my ticket home. I started asking strangers, "Where's the Riverdale bus stop station?" I ran into a bodega to ask for directions. And in that bodega's freezer, I found the elixir. Without even thinking, I grabbed a bottle and guzzled it down. A sense of peace washed over me. I grew calmer and calmer with each swig. I'm on 48th and 2nd. Okay, I'll catch the express bus on 50th and 3rd. I could not wait to see Yonkers again. I met Deborah on Wall Street. That's right, I worked on Wall Street in the mailroom, but it was Wall Street. I was immediately smitten by Deborah. She wore these long conservative dresses, fuzzy sweaters. Her perfume was intoxicating, and she always had this warm, glowing, welcoming smile. On the subway back up to Yonkers, I'd get a 40-ounce and strategize how to get something going with Deborah. Next time I see her, I promise myself, I'm going to ask her her name. To avoid the shame and humiliation of hearing the B word, I decided to cruise Deborah's cubicle. I discovered that Deborah has a cat, that she loves the Yankees, and that her name is Deborah Tucker. No sign of a boyfriend. Back in the mailroom, I searched for mail addressed to her department. Oh, hi, Deborah Tucker. I'm a Yankee fan, too. Want to go to a game? It's easy to laugh about it now, but I was crushed when Deborah shot me down. At lunch, I'd grab a tall can, walk down to Battery Park, stare at the green lady, and think of Deborah. A 40-ounce for the subway ride, back to Yonkers, a stop at the bodega, and as many Valentine ales as my skinny wallet would provide. Then I did something really weird. One day after work, I followed Deborah to the subway station. My first stalk, but definitely not my last. I thought I was the most romantic guy in the world. I'm in the Broadway diner in Yonkers. Leah, this nerdy girl from my job, walks in. You live in Yonkers, Doug? I totally blew her off. Give me Deborah, or give me death. Then, a ray of hope. My sister Judy set me up with one of her friends. This is Lori. Ain't she a babe? In the lobby of the Empire State Building, there used to be a bar called Houlihan's. The window looked out onto 34th Street in the heart of Midtown. Me and Lori met there and had a couple drinks. And then went bar hopping. I thought everything was going great. As we walked back to the subway station, I was sure we'd have a second date. A day or two later, I dropped by Judy's place and got hit with some unflattering news. Lori says I have a drinking problem. What are you talking about, Lori? I just had a couple of shots and a couple of beers. Douglas, Judy told me, even when you're not drinking, you smell like alcohol. It's very unattractive. Those last three words, it's very unattractive, exploded like a golden arrow in my heart. If drinking was standing in the way of finding love, I had to do something about it. I went to a couple of 12-step meetings, but I immediately decided that they were for weaklings who didn't have the willpower to quit on their own. There sure were a lot of cute girls at those meetings, though. I started thinking maybe New York was my problem. How could I be so alone among so many people? Maybe I just needed a fresh start somewhere else. London, England was my first choice. I'd be the toast of the town over there. London, here I come. A passport? What the hell is a passport? Guess I'm not going to England after all. Then, one day at Show World, in that spiritual dungeon of secrecy and shame, a chance encounter with porn starlet Lois Ayres' roommate sent my life in a brand new direction. Her name was Tommy Ray. She was the lead singer in an all-chick metal band from L.A. Tommy was standing at the top of this stairwell, where Lois would soon be performing. I had no idea, as I walked up that stairwell, that it would lead to a brand new life in L.A. It was Tommy's first time in New York. I spent the next couple of days showing her the city, the way only a native New Yorker can. As pathetic as it sounds, hanging out with Tommy brought purpose to my life. Did she really know Billy Idol and Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue and Slash from Guns N' Roses? It was as if, by hanging out with Tommy, I'd been resurrected from the dead. I had just one more question. When's the next flight to L.A.? I really believed Tommy when she told me I could stay with her, and Lois, when I got to L.A., that she couldn't wait to put music to the lyrics that I'd read to her, that my rock and roll dreams were about to take flight. For the next 3 months, I took every office temp job I could find, and saved every penny, until finally the big day arrived, April 6th, 1988, the day I moved to LA. On the day I moved to LA, the strangest thing happened. I ran into my psycho dad at Grand Central Station. "I hear you're moving to California." "Yeah, Dad," was all I said. We shook hands, but I walked away thinking I'd never see my psycho dad again. I landed at LAX with $1,500 and Tommy's address scribbled on a piece of paper. Lois answered with this sort of "who the fuck are you and what the fuck do you want" look on her face. "It's me, Doug, from New York, remember?" I began to sense that Lois wasn't expecting me. "Is Tommy here?" "Tommy doesn't live here." "She doesn't?" "No." "Duh. She's at the Rainbow every night." "The Rainbow?" "Yeah, the Rainbow, on the Sunset Strip," Lois said as she slammed the door in my face. "Great to see you again too, Lois." So that first night in LA, I head over to the Rainbow in search of Tommy. The place was packed, wall to wall with headbangers, blaring music. I looked up at the stage. There was Tommy, singing her heart out. To make a long story short, she barely remembered me. And after that night, I never saw her again. I looked Tommy up many years later. She married James Brown, the godfather of soul. Had a kid with him. How about that? I'll always be grateful to Tommy. If it weren't for her, I might still be in Yonkers. Day 2 in LA was so fucking depressing. I was stuck in a Fleabag motel in Hollywood, wishing more than anything that I was back in New York. I wanted to go home so badly. Coming out to California was the biggest mistake of my life. I was certain of it. But I couldn't go back because of what my sister Judy said to me right before I left. I think her exact quote was, "You'll be back in 2 weeks." I'm wandering the streets of Hollywood in a total daze. I never felt so alone. Then I remembered that place I passed on the way to Lois's. A 1-bedroom for $550, and they wanted first and last. You could see the Hollywood sign from the bedroom window. I shelled out first and last and signed the lease before I could change my mind. Right around the corner on Sunset Boulevard was the Cat and Fiddle, a hipster hotspot. On Friday and Saturday nights, the Cat and Fiddle was packed with hot girls. And I'd stand against the wall, glass of Coke in hand, trying to find the nerve to say something to just one of them. And then something amazing happened. I'm standing next to the payphone when this drop-dead knockout girl asks me if I have change for the phone. I gave her a quarter and walked away. I guess you could say I was playing hard to get. I walked back to the bar to refill my Coke when she tapped me on my shoulder and said, "I owe you a quarter." Erin was a Clairol model. She was on a blind date, but the guy stood her up. We sat down at a table. Being fresh off the boat from New York was scoring major points with Erin. Then this guy walks up to our table and says, "Are you Erin?" I walked back out to Sunset Boulevard thinking I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. I hadn't even gotten Erin's number. You fucking idiot. And then I hear, "Douglas! Douglas!" I turn around. It was Erin. She came up to me, handed me her phone number and said, "Call me." That Sunday, Erin came over. I still didn't have any furniture. 2 pillows and a blanket. That's all. Let's just say nature took its course. And I was head over heels in love. Forget higher than a kite. I was higher than a guy in a wingsuit. It really felt like I was walking on air. A day passed and I hadn't heard from Erin. And then another day passed and I hadn't heard from Erin. And then another day passed and I hadn't heard from Erin. And then a week had passed. Is my phone working? It's May 1988. These things don't exist yet. I started leaving Erin messages on her and her roommate's answering machine. This was long before voicemail. Anyone in Erin's apartment could hear my messages, which were growing in frequency and frustration. And then...
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.
Honestly, all those years ago, I had no idea what a fucking psycho I was. It was back to the Cat and Fiddle in search of a suitable replacement for Erin. Vicky was a sweetheart, and she really loved sex, but I just wasn't that into her. We were together for about 2 months, and when I broke it off, she went absolutely ballistic. More about that later. I met Dawn on the bus to Venice Beach. Turns out she was from Queens. She came back to my place and had sex with me that night, but I never called her after that. Pornography was still my one true love. Hollywood Boulevard was the closest thing to Times Square that LA had to offer. Welcome to Show World West. What a fucking dungeon. Unbelievably, the boots didn't have doors on them. And there were always these creepy guys looking for someone to hook up with. Plus, the LAPD would come in on a slow night looking for someone to take to jail. God, how I missed Show World. My first job in LA was at an employment agency on Wilshire Boulevard, where I worked as an office temp. The first of, 10,000 dead-end temp jobs all across LA that I absolutely hated. But somehow, week after week, month after month, year after year, I managed to just scrape by. Every now and then I'd land at a real cool spot, like A&M recording studios in Hollywood. For one thing, it was a 5-minute walk from my place. Don Henley was recording The End of the Innocents. David Crosby asked me for a post-it. I'd look up and see Joan Jett smiling at me as she walked by. I went out to the food truck, and there was Barry White ordering a burrito. And my boss, Mark, was from fucking Yonkers! I really wanted to keep this gig. I did my absolute best, but Mark turned out to be a fucking asshole. He fired me just because this chick left a message for Don Henley, and I wrote down her number wrong. This is back in the olden days when everything was done by hand. Henley came out and asked me about it. I told him I was getting slammed when she called and might have written her number down wrong. I apologized. Don't worry about it. She'll call back. That was his attitude. Mark wasn't so sympathetic. Not long after that, the temp agency called. Today's your last day, Douglas. Just to add insult to injury, the bus to my next temp assignment was directly across the street from A&M Recording Studios. Speaking of buses, my first 2 years in LA, I rode them everywhere. Santa Monica, Culver City, downtown, wherever the next temp assignment led me. Sometimes I'd luck out and get a seat, but most of the time, it was standing room only. I felt like I'd blown the chance of a lifetime. At 25 years old, I felt like my life was over because I got fired from A&M Records. I thought about drinking for the first time in 2 years. Maybe I should go back to one of those meetings. There sure were a lot of cute girls there. So I walk into this meeting. They were talking about their fucked up childhoods. I discovered my fucked up parents anonymous. At least that's what I called it in my novel Jerk Off. There are some moments in life that you just never, ever forget. This is one of them. I'm walking up Fairfax Avenue, on my way to my fucked up parents anonymous, when I see Michelle for the very first time. All these years later, the memory of Michelle is lodged like a dagger in my soul. My fucked up parents anonymous gave me a place to talk about all the fucked up things my psycho dad had done to me. After the meeting, people would come up to me and offer their support. Some of them very beautiful women. After the meeting, Michelle asked me if I was coming to Cantor's. I told Michelle I was bussing it, hoping she'd say, "I can give you a ride," which is exactly what she said. We went to Cantor's, and then Michelle dropped me off at my place. I got out of the car thinking, this girl really likes me. For the record, I told Michelle about Vicky. A couple of days later, Michelle called and asked me if I wanted a ride to the meeting that night. Then at Cantor's, we talked about our mutual love of Charles Dickens. Want to come over to my place and watch Great Expectations, Douglas? Sure. Back to Michelle's place in West Hollywood to watch Great Expectations, which we watched for like 5 minutes, and then had sex, probably 5 times before sunup. Then I took Vicky to see Dances with Wolves, took her back to my place, had sex, and then told her about Michelle. Vicky didn't take it well. I had a bronze statue of a lady picking grapes. Vicky picked it up and threw it at me on her way out the door, which she slammed with all her might. Definitely not the last time that would happen.
Fucking asshole!
One day, after a MAFUPA meeting, I fucked a Parents Anonymous, me and Michelle were walking to her car, and I realized I was falling in love with her. But I loved porn more. And one night, in that soul dungeon, I met Officer Reyes and Officer Jackson. They charged me with lewd conduct and took me to headquarters. I was fingerprinted, booked, and released. And then I did arguably the stupidest thing in human history. I told Michelle, "You fucking idiot." It was as if I'd fallen off the pedestal Michelle had placed me on. I had my day in court, and the judge sentenced me to 6 Perverts Anonymous meetings. These meetings became the genesis for my novel, Sex Slaves. Then Michelle called to tell me that her therapist, Sheila, thought we should take a time out. For 90 days? No! 90 days without Michelle seemed like an eternity. So I turned to my one true love, pornography. My brand new TV VCR combo sure was coming in handy. I bought this little shitbox off my neighbor for $600. One night I drove past Michelle's place, and when I didn't see her car outside, I waited for hours for her to come home. Some people might call that stalking. I called it romantic. I thought Michelle would be happy to see me when she got home. At first she didn't recognize me. "It's me, Douglas. What are you doing here?" The fear in her face vanished, and she stared at me with total disgust. Michelle allowed me to walk her to her door, but she would not let me come inside. A couple months passed. I got this really great job at Fujitsu. They even let me drive the company van. I called Michelle to tell her the wonderful news. I thought she'd be so impressed.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.
Not again! Then, at a MAFUPA meeting, there she was. She looked absolutely stunning. She saw me and smiled. She'd landed a great job as a legal secretary at a law firm in Century City. She moved to a brand new apartment in Beverly Hills, and she got a brand new Lexus. Thanks to Sheila, Michelle began to recognize how short she'd been selling herself over the years. She was a UCLA graduate from Pacific Palisades. So what was she doing in that dump on Poinsettia? And why would she want anything to do with a loser like me? If I just would have asked her right then and there, "Where'd you move? Can I see your new place?" the outcome probably would have been a lot different. But I was afraid she'd tell me about this super handsome, super rich guy she was seeing now. So I hid down the street in my diarrhea-colored shitbox, and when Michelle came out of the parking lot in her brand new red Lexus, I followed her all the way to her new place in Beverly Hills. I started driving by Michelle's place several times a day, sometimes in my shitbox, sometimes in the Fujitsu van. I thought it was all so romantic. At the same time, I wondered if she knew what I was doing. I called her at her job. She agreed to meet me at Raffalo's in Hollywood, so obviously she didn't know I was stalking her. This guy was still at the forefront of my mind. I'm not here to get back with you, I told her, thinking I was beating her to the punch. I could see the hurt in her eyes when I said that. Looking back through the lens of time, I can now see what I could not see then. That Michelle genuinely loved me, that a lifelong partnership with her was entirely possible. But pride and fear were the driving forces behind me and the heartache, terror, and destruction that unfolded. We're sitting at this table at Raffalo's. My genius opening line, "I'm not here to get back with you," explodes like a mushroom cloud. Like I said, I could see the hurt in her eyes. She really did love me. She reached into her purse and took out the letter I'd written her at the beginning of our 90-day separation. "You said 90 days is a long time to be alone. What makes you think I've been alone all this time, Douglas?" So I was right all along. Like a spoiled little punk, I slammed a 20 on the table and stormed out. I marched down the Walk of Fame, engulfed in rage. Then I turned around and started walking back to Raffalo's. As Michelle was getting in her car, I rushed over and said some truly vile things to her. Michelle remained calm, got back in her red Lexus, and drove away. I knew she was gone forever now, but I just could not accept it. I drove back to her place and waited for her. But she didn't come home. There was an empty fast food bag on the floor of the car. I ripped it open and started writing Michelle a hateful, vitriolic, obscenity-laden letter which looked like it had been scrawled by a madman. But I wasn't done yet. I went inside her building and slid the letter under her door. Then I began stalking her, endlessly, for years. 1992 was the darkest year of my life. I'd hide out in the back of the Fujitsu warehouse in a catatonic state, thinking about Michelle, her face, her hair, her body, her scent, her smile, her laugh, from the first time I saw her, to the catastrophe that followed, and every moment in between. The memory of Michelle was like a movie in my mind that I could not stop watching over and over again. I shared about it at my Porn Addicts Anonymous meeting. One of the guys suggested I go see Alan, a therapist who specializes in sex and love addiction. The best thing about therapy with Alan was that it was walking distance to Michelle's place. Alan genuinely wanted to help me, but nothing was changing. I could not get Michelle off my mind, whether doing deliveries in the Fujitsu van or driving my own shitbox. I'd drive by Michelle's place countless times a day and wander the lobby and the food court at her job too. On Friday and Saturday nights, I'd wait for her to come home. In my sick, twisted mind, if Michelle came home alone, there was still hope for us. And then a miracle. My boss Hector called me into his office. I thought I was going to be fired for doing drive-bys in the company van. How wrong I was. "Douglas," Hector told me, "we're transferring you to San Francisco." I fell in love with San Francisco the minute I arrived. It reminded me a lot of New York, though it wasn't nearly as crowded and the people weren't nearly as pissed off. And then I found this really cool studio apartment in Lower Haight for just $550 a month. Things were just falling into place. Fujitsu San Francisco was a dream come true. I was logistics coordinator, the guy in charge of the warehouse. This is Tom. Tom worked in sales. Tom's dad was CEO of the company. Like me, Tom loved baseball. And if the Giants or A's were home on a weekday afternoon, guess where we were having lunch? Me and Tom invented this game called warehouse ball. Kinda like stickball, but in a warehouse. You paint a strike zone on a shipping crate. The ball was made of electric tape, and the bat was from a broom in the supply closet. Doing play-by-play was the best part. Tom was from Chicago, so he did Harry Carey. Hallelujah! A base hit! And me, being from New York, I did Phil Rizzuto. Holy cow! And we had fans too. People would come out to the warehouse to watch warehouse ball. Unfortunately, Art, The sales manager got hit in the head with a line drive. Sorry about that, Art. Tom became my best friend. We'd go to the movies after work. One day we went to Berkeley. I met this blonde knockout in a coffee shop, but I was too much of a pussy to ask for her number. Fucking pussy. When I told Tom about Michelle, he told me about this movie called Damage. Damage is about a guy who's obsessed with his ex. The closing scene in my movie Wreck, which I made 30 years later, is an homage to the closing scene in Damage, which, if you're morbidly inclined, I highly recommend. It didn't take me long to figure out that my new place was smack dab in the middle of Crack Whore Central. I let one of them in my car, changed my mind, and then had to give her $20 to get out. I had a basketball in the car. She grabbed it and fucking tried to run away with my basketball. I got out of the car, chased her up the street, got into a tug of war with her for the basketball, which I finally won. One Sunday morning, I'm cruising the Tenderloin when I picked up this dude disguised as a chick. I made the realization and told him to get out of my car. He started cursing me out and slammed the door when he left, but thank God that's as far as it went. I was cruising hookers nonstop. I knew I needed help. But there were no sex addiction meetings in San Francisco. All they had was Romance Anonymous, which was mostly just chicks sharing about their recent breakup, and guys hovering around like vultures, hoping to swoop down on some tasty snacks. I called Alan in LA. He told me to go back to Romance Anonymous and tell him what was going on. So I did, and after every meeting, some guy would come up to me. Al was addicted to gay hustlers. His wife of 50 years had no idea. Mitch was single and super wealthy. His thing was meeting dominatrixes in sleazy Tenderloin hotels and smoking crack with them. Tex was a straight-laced Christian minister from Abilene who moved to San Francisco to embrace his gayness and found himself trapped in the bathhouse scene. We started having sex addiction meetings in my apartment, pretty much copying the meetings in LA. 30 years later, the program that started in my apartment is still flourishing. I put an ad in the personals of the SF Weekly, which was sort of like the Tinder of the early 90s. I met Kelly at the Orbit Cafe, which was just down the street from my place. Kelly was a virgin. She was a kindergarten teacher. People always told her she looked like Liz Taylor. On our second date, she came back to my place, but second base was as far as she'd go. On a night I was supposed to meet her parents at a restaurant, I stood her up and never saw her again. I met Marika at the Utah Inn. Marika was sizzling hot. She told me her dad looked like Clark Gable and showed me a picture. I didn't see the resemblance. But we went to the video store to rent Gone with the Wind. The news was playing on the radio. North Korea's dictator died that day. Funny the things you remember. We went back to my place and watched Gone with the Wind for about 5 minutes. And then, beep, each other's brains out. Marika was sizzling hot, and she loved sex even more than me, if that's possible. She came over whenever I called and never complained when I sent her away. Until one day she called to say she felt like she was being used. Does this mean you're not coming over tonight, Marika? Mara was a tortured Japanese-American artist who painted pictures of faces engulfed in agony. She lived in a 3-bedroom in North Beach with her roommates, Joe and Sam. Mara was skinny as a pencil, and she fucked like a dead fish. But her place was walking distance to the lusty lady. When Sam moved out abruptly, Mara asked me if I'd like to move in. A room in North Beach for just $250 a month? Think of all the money I'll save. I called Dana, the building manager, and told her the news. Then I got a U-Haul, stuffed it with all my stuff, and just like that, I was all moved in. I'm at work. Mara calls. Douglas, did you use my stapler? Yeah, I might have. Will you please ask me first next time? I'm at work. Mara calls. Douglas, did you leave a spoon in the sink? And did you take some of my honey hibiscus tea without asking? And please don't leave the toilet seat up again. Hi Dana, it's Douglas. Can I have my apartment back? Hi Douglas, your apartment's still available, but we've listed it and are now asking $600 a month. An extra $100 a month to escape Mara was a fucking bargain. And I was back in my place that weekend. "You're leaving?" Mara said when I told her the news. "Why?" Mitch called me from the Tenderloin at 3 in the morning. Mistress Kimberly and Mistress Tammy had taken his wallet and his car keys and his clothes, and he was trapped in a seedy hotel room in the Tenderloin. So I drive over at 3 in the morning, bring him some clothes, knock on his door. But he wouldn't leave, and I totally understand. Then one morning, my boss, Don Torres, calls me into his office. "Douglas, the LA branch is hiring a logistics coordinator. You have seniority. The job is yours if you want it." Everyone I talked to said the exact same thing. Do not go back to LA. Welcome back, Douglas. As the O.J. Simpson trial began to unfold, I drove by Michelle's place for the first time since coming back to LA. In my new shit box. To borrow an analogy from the 80s, my obsession for Michelle had merely been placed on pause. And coming back to LA was like pressing play. Stalking Michelle became a full-time job. I followed her everywhere I could, whenever I could. At work, I'd hide out in the back of the warehouse in a catatonic state, wondering where she was, who she was with, and how I could get back with her again. One night, I followed her to a laundromat, got in my shit box, dashed back to my place in Culver City, got a basket full of laundry. Back in my shit box, back to the laundromat. Michelle was throwing her clothes in the dryer. "Michelle, is that you?" At first she smiled, but when she realized it was me, her face turned white. "I don't want to talk to you." "But Michelle, I don't want to talk to you." She was shaking now as she finished throwing her clothes in the dryer. "I'm sorry," I said, and left. Then a near catastrophe compelled me to make my next genius move. I was driving by Michelle's building, staring into the garage, trying to see if her car was parked inside. I looked up and slammed on the brakes. Michelle was getting out of her car. I drifted all the way over to the row of parked cars and very nearly hit her. On July 9th, 1995, 6 years to the day I met Michelle, I started drinking again. Labor Day weekend, I'm driving over to Michelle's place, a bottle of whiskey between my legs, a shitbox littered with empty cans of beer. The cops notice me and make a U-turn. I know they're going to pull me over. No way I'm spending Labor Day weekend in the LA County Jail. I haul ass down a side street and disappear before they can catch me. And now for my next genius move. I quit my job, sell the shitbox for $200, and hop on a Greyhound back to San Francisco. So I'm back in San Francisco, but with no job, no apartment, and dwindling savings. Mitch put me up for a day or two, but you know what they say about house guests. I wound up in the same Tenderloin motel that Mitch called me from that night. But look at the bright side. It was walking distance to the lusty lady. I'd wake up hungover, exhausted, disgusted with myself. I'd turn on the OJ trial and realize things could be a lot worse. In my twisted mind, I took comfort in knowing that I would never try to harm Michelle physically. Every day it was the same. Booze, beer, the lusty lady, the OJ trial, and thoughts of Michelle. One day I saw Mara. I ducked out of sight. No way I could let her see me in such a deplorable state. I wandered the streets of San Francisco day after day with nowhere to go and all day to get there. Funds were dwindling. With my last few bucks, I bought a one-way ticket back to LA. I arrived back in LA the very same day that O.J. Simpson was acquitted of murder. The next 3 months were a total blur of booze, beer, and cheap motel rooms. All my money was long since gone. So I called my mommy in Florida. "Send money, Mommy." The shitbox was gone, so I couldn't do drive-bys. But I could still do walk-bys. I spent countless hours, day and night, wandering Michelle's neighborhood aimlessly. Am I just being paranoid? Or are people looking at me? Maybe the word is out about the woman on Rexford Drive being stalked by her ex. Then one night, strolling down the alleyway behind Michelle's building, guess who I ran into? They sat me down in front of a tree. Robles waited with me while Saltzman drove over to Michelle's place to ask if she wanted to press charges. Robles leaned over me, put his index finger and thumb together and said, "You're this close to going to jail, Douglas." Saltzman came back, got in my face and said, "Michelle wants nothing to do with you, Douglas." For reasons I'll never know, Michelle did not press charges, and I walked away. One night, drunk out of my mind, I went into a video store just as they were closing. There was a bathroom in the adult section. I hid myself and waited for them to close the store. I thought I was going to have the time of my life. Before, they had a really great selection. I'm huddled up in the bathroom, listening as these two boobs shut the store down for the night. Finally, the sound I was waiting for, the gate being dragged across the window. I come out of the bathroom, and all of a sudden, motion detector! Oh my God, I'm going to jail! The sound of them dragging the gate back across the window. I thought for sure it was the LAPD. Thank God it wasn't. "You guys locked me in," I said as I hurried out the door. I don't remember the first time I walked into a supermarket and guzzled a can of beer, but I do remember it became an everyday thing. Pretty soon, I was guzzling Jack Daniels. Neighborhood supermarkets became my watering hole. I'd wander into the bread aisle, and when the coast was clear, I'd break open a bag of bread and inhale as many slices as I could. Give me a half a pound of ham, half a pound of roast beef, half a pound of potato salad. Bread just got so boring. The trick was to glide down an empty aisle, inhale the food as quickly as possible, and leave the packaging behind the boxes on the shelves. One day I was walking down the street and I saw an apartment for rent sign, so I wandered into the building and found that the apartment had been left open. I got to stay there for a couple of days. But for the most part, every night I tried to find a building with an open entrance and make that hallway my home for the night. One day I went to Vaughn's for lunch, and I noticed this guy. And I'm pretty sure he noticed me too. Guess I'm having lunch at Ralph's today. So I'm at Ralph's, wondering if that guy at Vaughn's was just a coincidence. And I noticed this guy glaring at me. What's your problem? So I'm gliding down an empty aisle, inhaling my roast beef, and he comes up from behind me and says, "Hey, get the hell out of the store." I thought about reporting this outrage to the store manager, but there was a Lucky's on the opposite corner, so I just went there for lunch. On Thanksgiving Eve, I walked into a CVS, guzzled a bottle of Boone's Farm strawberry wine, and threw up before I could make it back outside. Clean up, aisle 6. One rainy night, I called my mommy. Collect, of course. "Send money, Mommy." For the first time ever, Mommy said, "Douglas, I can't help you," and hung up. I ran into Chad, this depressing guy from those sex addicts meetings. But now he was super cheerful and upbeat. He told me he'd joined the sober community and delicately suggested that I do the same. We play softball on Saturday mornings and volleyball on Sundays. Chad said hope to see you there and gave me a hug. Thanks, Chad, but I'm kind of busy. I cracked open a bottle of Smirnoff, guzzled it down, and passed out in a nearby hallway. I came to on death's doorstep with a splitting headache and no aspirin. I didn't even know what day of the week it was. I started heading toward the softball field, hoping it was Saturday. Some guy was hitting grounders to the players in the field. I was standing behind the backstop. The guy turned around and looked at me, sort of disgustedly, and said, "Are you an alcoholic?" "Yes," was all I said. "Well, grab a glove and get out there." Ain't had a drink since. What a difference 2 years sober makes. I haven't had a drink, or shoplifted, or driven by Michelle's place in 2 years. I got a new place, a new car, and another chick who loved me that I couldn't get rid of fast enough. Porn remained my one true love. I'd been doing shipping and receiving at Bell Industries for nearly 2 years, and then, a couple of months later, each department was called into the conference room one by one, where Marla from Human Resources broke the news that the company had been sold, and every one of us would soon be out of a job. But every dark cloud has a silver lining. Marla would be meeting with each of us individually to discuss our severance package. Severance package? Isn't that where they give you money? It was my turn to meet with Marla in her office. I sat across from her thinking, God, I'd love to see you in an Ass Man video. I couldn't understand a word she was saying other than the part about me getting a severance check for $8,500. Bell Industries was like a ghost town those last couple of weeks. I'd sit there at my desk just wondering what I was going to do next. The thought occurred to me that I hadn't been to Yankee Stadium since the day before I moved to California. And I'd never once been to Fenway Park. And how far from Boston was Montreal? Maybe I could go see the Expos. And since I'm in Canada, I might as well go see the Blue Jays. And I always wanted to see Wrigley Field. And if I'm already in Chicago, might as well go to a White Sox game. And maybe the next day, I'll go to Milwaukee. To make a long story short, I mapped out a trip to all 30 big league ballparks. When I told my neighbor Greg about the trip, his exact words were, "Dude, I'm going with ya." Not only did Greg love baseball, but he was a reporter for KLON Radio, a local news station. Station manager Nick Roman agreed to pay Greg $100 a story from each of the 30 big league ballparks. What a great documentary this would make. We soon learned that Major League Baseball wants a lot of money for that sort of thing. But Nancy Mazmanian of the Angels told us that if we were doing it for charity, we might have better luck. My friend Mike Finch had recently died of ALS. With the help of the ALS Association, our trip to all 30 big league ballparks became a campaign to raise awareness for Lou Gehrig's disease. E-Limos saw an advertising opportunity and gave us a town car to make the trip in. The documentary never got made, but I wrote a book about the adventure, Baseball Maniacs. It's dedicated to Mike Finch. At Shea Stadium, I asked Donald Trump what he knew about Lou Gehrig's disease. We're getting close to a cure, he said, and hopefully we'll have one soon. And then he shooed me away in an interview that lasted all of 10 seconds. One morning, my sister Judy called to tell me that my mom was very ill and that I should come home to say goodbye. My mom was in a hospital in Teaneck, New Jersey. She was lying unconscious beside a ventilator machine. I got on my knees beside her bed, told her how sorry I was for all I'd put her through, and thanked her for all she'd done for me and my sisters. My mom raised 4 kids on a secretary's salary, survived breast cancer, and my psycho dad too. My mom paid for my Little League fees, bought my Little League uniforms, took me to my Little League games, and to Yankee Stadium too, even though she didn't know the difference between a home run and a touchdown. And there was so much more to thank her for. The doctor came in and told me to go downstairs and get some coffee while they changed my mom's bedding. I went downstairs to the cafeteria and came back a half an hour later. "Douglas," the doctor told me, "your mom is gone." The doctor explained that people on the cusp often wait to say goodbye to their loved ones before they go. I was my mom's final goodbye. My friend Vince was a retired businessman. Vince loved live theater. "When Vince first asked me to be in the play he was producing, my first response was..." In all seriousness, the play was being performed at the Redondo Beach Theater for the Performing Arts, and the proceeds were going to benefit a women's shelter. I told Vince I wasn't an actor, but he didn't seem to care. I guess he could see in me something I didn't know was there.
Detective Rick Reynolds. Robbery homicide. Don't let these quiet streets fool you. Anaheim can get ugly fast.
But here's the kicker. Princess Leia's in it. And not only that, the rehearsals are at her house. Every Sunday the cast would meet at Carrie's place on Coldwater Canyon for rehearsal. Sometimes Debbie Reynolds would be there. I remember one morning she said, "Would you like a cup of coffee?" At the time, Carrie was hosting a talk show from her house called Conversations from the Edge. What a trip it was to be sitting in the very same living room you watched on TV the night before. One morning, Carrie's daughter Billy came downstairs and started playing classical piano. One of the rehearsals was on Super Bowl Sunday. That really pissed me off. We did 3 performances, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon. Many years later, after Carrie and Debbie left us, I picked up Billy at LAX. On the way back to her mom's place, I asked Billy if she remembered the time she came downstairs and played piano for us when she was a little girl. Billy said she didn't remember, but I'll never forget it. All these years later, being able to say that I was in a play with Princess Leia is pretty fucking cool. Right around Valentine's Day, I went to a backyard party and met Renee. We went out for coffee and got married. Actually, we got married at the Beverly Hills Courthouse, where they have weddings every Wednesday. Then we went to a falafel stand and took a long walk on the beach. Renee wanted a baby. I was hoping marriage would cure my porn addiction. Just about 9 months later, tragedy struck when our son Patrick was stillborn. Naturally, Renee was devastated. As ashamed as I was to admit it, I saw this tragedy as a chance to escape. I could already see that married life was not for me. But under these circumstances, there was just no way I could leave Renee. So we packed up our stuff and began life anew in a little house in Florida, right next door to my psycho dad, who, over the years, had somehow morphed into the happiest guy in the world. Dad and Renee were the best of friends. It was clear he wanted to make amends for the past. And for the year we were in Florida, Dad was a bright spot in our lives. I hit rock bottom while working as a security guard at Melbourne Airport. Sitting in this hell box in 90-degree weather with 90-degree humidity, with nothing but a handheld fan to keep me cool. 9/11 was only months earlier. I was supposed to be checking IDs and looking in every single trunk. I was so depressed. How did I go from this to this? I was beating the shit out of myself for staying with Renee. Look where it led me. And I couldn't just go home and numb out on porn or drive by Michelle's. No lusty lady in North Beach. No Venus Fair in North Hollywood. Just me and my brand new dog shit station in life. I stopped checking IDs and looking in trunks. I was just waving everybody through. If you are a terrorist, please detonate now. Suddenly this guy appears. Why aren't you checking IDs? Why aren't you looking in trunks? What the hell is wrong with you? We're at war! I called headquarters and said, I quit. Renee was not happy to see me when I came home. I wrote about that day at Melbourne Airport in Recusode 9 of my original comedy series Rec, entitled Florida. I wrote my novel Sex Slaves while working as a security guard at a construction site. They were building a movie theater. There were jackhammers going off all around me. I was sitting on a plastic bucket. The laptop was on a plastic bucket. But I couldn't hear a sound. I was so dialed into this story I was writing about. This guy from New Jersey named Rob, who meets this rocker chick from LA named Taya, and her porn starlet roommate Snow White, and follows him out to LA, and gets picked up in a vice sting, and gets sent by Judge Cleanfinger to Porn Addicts Anonymous, and writes a screenplay about the characters he meets there that becomes a worldwide smash. So I'm typing away, and this construction worker comes over and taps me on the shoulder and says, call home. I pull my cell phone out of my pocket. It had been ringing non-stop. Renee had gone into labor. I rushed over to the hospital, and a couple of hours later, Cecilia Ann Mallon was born. Lindy, a sober junkie alkie, asked me to be on her sobriety panel at the Brevard County Jail. Every Wednesday at 5 p.m., I'd hop on the 95 North and meet my sober friends outside the main entrance. First, we'd have a meeting for the women, and then we'd have a meeting for the men. One Wednesday at 5, I hopped on the 95 North, but when I got to the jail, no one was there. They must have gone inside already. So I go inside, hold up my ID, and say, "Sober panel." And I realize I'm in jail. Without Lynn or any of my sober friends. And most importantly, without a guard escorting me. Then I realize, fuck, I'm lost. Then I saw this guy. I was going to ask for directions, but I thought he might drag me back to his cell. Wait, this looks familiar. Oh, thank God. As soon as I made it back outside, I called Lynn. "Douglas, did you not get my message? There's no panel tonight." Meeting Tanya was one of the most sobering experiences of my entire life. Tanya was from Canada. On her way to Disney World, she was involved in a fatality accident and was charged with felony DUI. She just received her sentence, 9 to 12 years in Florida State Prison. Tanya was having a nervous breakdown before our eyes. She was utterly inconsolable. Her face was a volcano of tears and snot. How easily Tanya's story could have been mine. My dad met Linda the Psycho at a bar. What a surprise there. Linda had a hideous scar on the side of her face. We later learned that she served a lengthy prison sentence in her home state of Missouri. One day, Dad brought Linda over, and Linda threatened to cut our baby daughter Cecilia's eyes out. Renee threw Linda out and immediately decided that we were moving back to LA. Back to the safety and security of her extensive and closely knit Italian family. If there's one thing I've learned about Renee over the years, when it comes to Cecilia's welfare, you might as well pick a fight with a fucking grizzly bear. Farewell, Brevard County Jail. Farewell, Space Coast Stadium, home of the Brevard County Manatees of the Florida Coast League, where parking is free, tickets are $5, and you get to hang out with this guy. Farewell, Golden Corral, aka the Trough, where you could stuff your face all day long for just $12. Farewell, Florida. Thank you for one unforgettable year. On the flight back to LA, I was filled with a sense of dread. In no time at all, I was cruising by Michelle's place again. And I soon discovered she was no longer alone. I started writing a screenplay about this nightmare, which I originally entitled Forever. But when I discovered there was a name for my condition, limerence, I changed the title to that name. In a twist of the sickest irony, Michelle's husband, Darren, was afflicted with and died of Lou Gehrig's disease. I treated my obsession for Michelle with porn. The adult section of Odyssey Video was stuffed to the gills with porn videos. Tuesday and Thursday was 99-cent day. I'd get there as soon as it opened. I got a job doing deliveries all around LA. There was always time to drive by Michelle's or cop a fresh bag of porn at Odyssey Video, which I'd nicknamed Big Yellow. Forget sneaking out to the living room at night. I was living on the couch. Renee and I were more like roommates than a married couple. Porn was my wife. What was holding us together? The answer to that question was obvious. Renee found a place called a kid's place, where Cecilia could hang out with other kids her age. Susie, the director, an expert in child development, very gently suggested that Cecilia had autism. To our credit, Renee and I got over our hurt feelings and made Cecilia's welfare our top priority. Through Susie's guidance and Renee's dogged determination, Cecilia began receiving a myriad of treatments, therapies, counseling, and other services that continue to help her along till this day. I started my own messenger service, which allowed me to eke out a living and take Cecilia to whatever therapy she might be receiving that day. At Step by Step, I met Jennifer. Remember her? I alluded to her at the very beginning of this tale. And in 1979, 3,000 miles away, the woman who would disfigure my soul was born. More about Jennifer later. I got a call for a rush delivery to famed director Peter Bogdanovich. I'd been in LA long enough to know it was a screenplay. I raced home and stuffed a copy of Mrs. Pete, this screenplay I'd just written about this little old lady serial killer from the 1920s, into the envelope. But Peter never got back to me. Little old ladies can be lethal, Peter. The Beverly Hills cheese store really kept Mr. Zippy busy. A high-end cheese boutique that catered to a very wealthy clientele. In the early 2000s, in the movie biz, a cheese basket or a cheese tray from the Beverly Hills cheese store was often sent as a way to sweeten a deal or say thanks. And the gated community of Beverly Park, arguably the wealthiest community in the world, was often my destination. So Norbert, the cheese store owner, calls and says, "Hey, Mr. Zippy, I got a cheese tray going up to Stallone's place in Beverly Park." To get into Beverly Park, you got to show the guard your ID, tell him where you're going, and then wait for permission to pass. I'm at Stallone's door. I ring the bell, but no one answers. After ringing the doorbell for like 20 minutes, I call Norbert. He goes, "The door's unlocked. Leave it in the kitchen." In I go. Yep, this is definitely Stallone's place. Here's the kitchen. I put down the cheese tray. As I'm leaving, I notice this table with all this paperwork. I stop and start looking at it. Looks like Sly's coming out with a fitness book. Then I get the sense that I'm being watched. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Stallone standing there glaring at me. I was back in the Zippy Mobile in seconds. Brillstein Gray was an A-list talent agency located on Wilshire Boulevard in Beverly Hills. It represented some of the biggest stars in the world. "Rush to the Hollywood Hills, Mr. Zippy." So I pick up a script for Skip Wills, whoever the fuck that is, but no way I'm opening it. Brillstein Gray's one of my best customers, and you can tell they run a really tight ship. The drop is way up in the Hollywood Hills. But there's a gate in the middle of the road. There's a code box, but I don't have the code. I tried calling Brillstein Gray, but you can't get service in the Hollywood Hills. I didn't know what the fuck to do. Then these Mexicans show up in a landscaping truck. They've got the code. They open the gate and drive through. I just followed them in. I ring the doorbell, but no one's answering. Hello? Hello? Anybody home? The thing is, Brillstein Gray, you got to get a signature. I can't just leave it. So I go in the house, and I'm walking down this long hallway, and this guy comes down the stairs. Brad Pitt! I couldn't believe it. He signs for the package and says, "Thanks." I hop back in the Zippy Mobile. I can't wait to tell everyone I just met Brad Pitt. Back on Sunset Boulevard. Before I can call anyone, my cell rings. It's Brillstein Gray. "Mr. Zippy, how did you get on the property?" I give him a quick review. "Mr. Pitt's security team will be calling you, Zippy." Sure enough, a minute later, I tell him the exact same thing. "Okay," was all he said. But something tells me heads rolled. Hubert Selby Jr. wrote Last Exit to Brooklyn and Requiem for a Dream. Like me, Cubby came from a fucked up New York City family, and he wrote about New York City the way only a true New Yorker can. A friend of mine had Cubby's number. I called him, told him I was a writer from New York City, and had the privilege of meeting him every Sunday for the last few months of his life. Cubby signed my copy of Last Exit to Brooklyn. That day, the most shocking and vicious novel I've ever written was heavily influenced by my brief friendship with Cubby.
What kind of work is it you do anyway? I mean, that is, if you don't mind me asking.
I'm a writer.
A writer, huh?
Yes, a writer.
You know, you ought to go talk to my friend Cubby. He's a writer, too.
Me, Renee, and Cecilia went to Santa Fe, New Mexico to visit our friends Ken and Richard. That's where these pictures were taken. On the way back to LA, Renee's brand new Ford Focus station wagon broke down. In Winslow, Arizona, the take it easy town. Ugh, it's the transmission. This is gonna take a minute. For the next couple of days, we wandered the streets of Winslow until finally, our chariot was repaired. We decided to visit the Grand Canyon on the way home. At the end of a very long day, Renee and I got into a heated argument. To diffuse the situation, I went for a long walk. The thought occurred to me. What if, in that moment, I'd snapped and murdered Renee? What would I do with Cecilia? I could see myself all through the night, hauling ass back to LA. Nona, no, Renee's still sleeping. I've got to go to work. Can I leave Cecilia with you? Then get every penny I could and disappear before Renee's body was found. These chilling thoughts became the genesis for my novel Fact and Fiction about an aspiring writer who murders his wife in a sudden fit of rage and pins it on the kid downstairs who just got out of prison. Thankfully, it was just a thought, and Renee and Cecilia are still joined at the hip. Early one morning, I got up to go to the bathroom, and when I came out, Renee was standing there. "I want a divorce," was all she said. "A divorce? Why?" "I want you out by the end of the week." My friend Danny owned an apartment building just a few blocks away. I had just enough for first and last. That was nearly 20 years ago. I've been here ever since. I had my eye on this sizzling hot sober chick, Nancy, who I'd nicknamed Torpedo Tits Tina in my novel Jerk Off. "I know, I'll have a housewarming party at my new place. I'll put up a flyer on the community board at the sobriety center. Hopefully Torpedo Tits Tina, Nancy will come. I think she kinda digs me." To back up just a little, 2 years earlier, in 2008, there was a major recession. I had to pull the plug on Mr. Zippy. Ever since then, I've been driving a limo. The day before the housewarming party, I go to Step by Step to pick up Cecilia. She's waiting for me in the lobby with her caregiver, who we'll call Jennifer. "Housewarming party at my new place tomorrow, Jennifer." "Sure, I'd love to." Nancy didn't show, but Jennifer did. "Where's Renee?" she asked. Thus began the greatest disaster of my entire life. Yes, even worse than this one. As obnoxious as this might sound, I swept Jennifer off her feet and had her wrapped around my finger in no time at all. When I asked her to take her clothes off on camera, she was all for it. One night, Jennifer came over, but she didn't want to have sex on camera. In fact, she didn't want to have sex at all.
Glad you came over. I missed you.
Don't touch me.
What?
Don't touch me.
Get your shit and get the fuck out of here.
Don't ever call me again. Fucking asshole.
I had no idea what a fucking pig I was. I thought she'd cool off in a couple of days. Boy, was I wrong. But let's go back to 2010. New Year's Day, to be exact. The sun comes up. Jennifer is sleeping by my side. My job calls. Noon pickup. David Lee Roth at the Four Seasons in Beverly Hills. I'm standing in front of the mirror, getting ready to go. Jennifer comes out from the bedroom and says, "You look so handsome." It was all downhill from there.
Fucking asshole.
I really was kind of feeling myself. I mean, I'm driving David fucking Lee Roth. If Yonkers could see me now. One morning, I pull up to Dave's mansion in Pasadena. Dave hops in and says, we're going to the great Eddie Van Halen's house. 20 minutes later, we're at Eddie's gate. We roll up the circular driveway to Eddie's recording studio. There, waiting to greet us with a giant smile on his face, was the legendary Eddie fucking Van Halen. The two rock legends embraced and started chatting. Dave looks at me and goes, "This is Doug." Eddie comes over, sticks out his hand and says, "How you doing, Doug?" "I'm Eddie." It was just so fucking surreal. I'm parked outside the studio, listening to them jamming inside. This guy comes out of the studio, walks up to me and says, "Hi, I'm Todd. I'm the band's manager." "Nice to meet you, Todd." Dave wants to know if you'll be his full-time driver. He'll start you at $1,000 a week. $1,000 a week? In 2010? Fuck yeah! Things got really weird, really fast. I roll up to Dave's gate in my pretty much new Ford Focus and park out front. Mindy, Dave's personal assistant, comes out to tell me I have to park on the street. Dave's got an F-150, an F-250, and an F-350 tightly parked underneath an awning. Take the F-150 today, Doug. Dave lives right off Fair Oaks. A giant oak tree on the corner makes seeing oncoming traffic a little tricky. I pull up a smidgen in front of it. "Wait behind the tree! If you do that again, you're fired!" I'm thinking, what the fuck? I wanted to say, "Dave, I've been driving 30 years. I've never had an accident." But $1,000 a week in 2010? Okay, Dave, sorry about that. On the Pasadena freeway, making our way to Hollywood. "Speed up! Slow down! You're too close! My front grill costs 15 grand! Okay, Dave, sorry about that. And to sweeten this mindfuck just a little bit more, our destination, A&M Recording Studios. Wonder if Mark still works here. Fucking asshole. So I'm sitting in the lounge thinking about what I'm going to say to Dave the next time he steps out of line. Something like, "Dave, cut the shit or find someone else." But $1,000 a week in 2010? Back out on Sunset, heading towards Western, where Dave needs to pick up a costume for his new video. To keep Dave off my back, I did something I've never done before. Dave was giving me shit about not slowing down fast enough. I started looking at this light instead of this light. And very nearly got T-boned. "Doug, what just happened?" We make it back to Pasadena in one piece, and Dave is watching me like a hawk as I try to squeeze the F-150 back into its parking space. Todd called me later that night to tell me I was fired. I didn't even last 2 weeks. To his credit, Dave paid me $2 grand for my final 3 days. I guess I might as well jump. And just like that, Jennifer and Eddie and Dave were gone. My solution was always the same. Jennifer blocked me on Facebook. "Hi, I'm Tammy. Want to be Facebook friends?" "Hi, Tammy. Sure." My new hobby, cyber stalking. Here we go again. Different street, different chick, same me. I got another limo job and would drive by Jennifer's 5 to 10 times a day. Sometimes I'd wait in my own car just down the street from her place. Tammy told me that Jennifer was going to Pepperdine in Malibu to get her master's in psychology. One night, I'm parked down the street. Jennifer hops into a white Jeep. I followed her all the way to Swingers in Santa Monica, and then back to her place. Some other guy's lucky night, and the opening scene in my novel Jerk Off. I'm walking down Venice Boulevard in a total fucking daze. This gold Hummer pulls up alongside of me. It's Dan Fonte. "Hey Douglas, you want a ride?" I met Fonte through Cubby. Dan Fonte was an internationally acclaimed novelist who taught creative writing at UCLA and allowed me to attend his classes for free. I hop in the Hummer and spill the beans about Jennifer. Fonte tells me he nearly blew his brains out over some broad who dumped him back in the 80s. Start praying, keep writing, and the next time you want to drive by that girl's place, call me first. I started writing Jerk Off that night. It's dedicated to Fonte. I took Fonte's advice and kept praying and kept writing. I still write a note to God every morning, and before I get in my car, I open the passenger door for him too. Fonte was so much more than a writing mentor. Jerk Off was coming along nicely, and Fonte was really helping the story along. When Jerk Off breaks into Michelle's apartment while she's at work, Fonte said, "Make sure he steals her dildo." When Jerk Off tries to lure Torpedo Tits Tina to the housewarming party, Fonte said, "Get Jerk Off a pet. It'll make him more sympathetic." Sure enough, Bobcat cracked Torpedo Tits Tina's heart wide open. When Fonte died, I changed the cover of Jerk Off to honor him. I sent a million emails and a million query letters, and it got me absolutely nowhere. I started self-publishing everything on this new app called CreateSpace. I didn't care if a single page got read. I'm the best goddamn writer on this planet, and fuck you for not knowing it. That was my attitude. And to be honest, still is. I got a job at Wilshire Limousine, one of LA's most prestigious limo companies. Wilshire Limousine's clients were A-list all the way. Day after day, year after year, I routinely drove the biggest stars in the world. After receiving yet another rejection letter from yet another talent agency, I started pitching Wreck, my original comedy series about a broke, lonely sex addict, chauffeur to the stars, writer to every writer, director, producer, showrunner, agent, development exec, actress, or actor who got in the limb. This is Denis. Denis is a development exec. Denis finds novels and turns them into movies. Exactly the person I'm looking for. Alexis Bukiak in my movie Wreck is based on Denis.
I am just not connecting to Rita's characters at all.
Denis lived in a quaint little house in Venice, about 20 minutes from LAX. Denis hops in the limb and says, "Hi Douglas, I'm Denis." "Hi Denis, my novel LA Limousine would make a great movie, and I've already written a pilot script, plus 15 episodes that would be perfect for Netflix." I think I was pitching Recusode 10, Time, the one where Rec goes back in time to fix his past, when I realized I was on Overland Avenue, about 5 traffic lights past LAX. "Nice meeting you, Douglas," was all Denise said when she got out of the limb. The next day, I was summoned to the conference room at Wilshire Limousine headquarters. Can you believe Denis complained? I was placed on report and suspended for 3 days. "I'll take that as a maybe, Denis. Just let me know when you're ready to set up a meeting." Denis and I continued to maintain opposite showbiz trajectories. When I heard she was taking over at Lucky Chap, I sent her one of my screenplays.
Hey, Rec. If you don't ask, it's an automatic no.
Every year, during award season, Netflix has its own private Oscar party at Chief Content Officer Ted Saranto's house in Hancock Park. It's always a major glam fest, with this year's crop of Netflix royalty lathering themselves in one another in worship and adulation that even Narcissus himself would find excessive. Private security, red carpet drop-off, the whole shebang. I'm picking up Laverne Cox from Orange is the New Black at her place in North Hollywood. I'm downstairs waiting when this super doofy looking guy with bottle bottom glasses and a snazzy suit with a bow tie walks past me, walks into Laverne's building, and then comes out looking totally lost. Poindexter? The science lab's that way. Laverne comes down in an elegant white dress. She and Poindexter embrace and start walking toward the limo. Poindexter turns out to be Kyle Loftus, Chief Content Development Officer at APA, one of LA's top talent agencies. On the ride back to Ted's place, I got to witness firsthand the bathtub depth of the Hollywood elite as Laverne and Kyle stared into her iPhone and agonized over what pictures of Laverne to post on social media. Dropping Laverne and Kyle off was like having an aching tooth pulled. What a relief. My time at Wilshire Limousine came to an end when, upon receiving yet another soul-crushingly lame paycheck, I put on my Mr. Zippy shirt and hand-delivered a box filled with all my novels, screenplays, and my original comedy series Rec to Ted's door. A few days later, I received a very curt email from Netflix telling me not to disturb their executives again. I immediately canceled my Netflix account. Take that, Ted.
Rec, the road to success is paved with failure.
Almost forgot to mention the time I picked up Harvey Weinstein at the Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills, and ASAP going to LAX. I would have handed him a copy of my novel LA Limousine about a sex addict limo driver if I had a copy with me. But as it turned out, it wouldn't have mattered anyway. I got a job at Motive, this new age limo company that used only Teslas. Robert was the boss, and Tiffany was his right-hand human. Morgan Freeman owned the company. That lady standing beside him, that's Lori McCreary, his business partner. More about her in a minute. I just started working at Motive when I got sent to LAX to pick up Lori and take her to her place in Malibu. I Google Lori and find out she runs Revelations Entertainment with Morgan Freeman. That's Lori and Morgan at the Oscars. That's Lori and Morgan at the Golden Globes. Lori and Morgan Lifetime Achievement, and on and on and on. The ride out to the boo was stone silent. I was trying to find the nerve to pitch Rec. Lori was looking at her iPhone. Here's the pitch. Lori looked up from her iPhone and said, "That's not how you get material to me." Ted? Denis? Allow me to introduce Lori. I wondered. Am I out of a job again? Apparently not, because within a few days I was driving Joe Gebba, co-founder of Airbnb, and his drop-dead knockout supermodel Brazilian girlfriend, Isabella, who have since married. Joe and Isabella were tight with Hollywood super agent Michael Kives and his wife Lydia, a civil rights attorney. On Friday and Saturday nights, the couples would pour into the Tesla and off we'd go. One evening, on the way to Jeff Bezos' house, we had to stop at Fox Studios so that Michael could give one of his clients a box of Cuban cigars. But sometimes, I'd wait outside Joe's place for days, just in case he needed me. "Hey Douglas, can you go to In-N-Out for us?" Joe would come downstairs, hand me $50, and off I'd go. I'd come back and give Joe his In-N-Out, and then give him his change, which he readily accepted. At the time, not only was I working at Motive, but on my off days, I was doing Lyft too. So the irony of handing this kid, who's worth $3.8 billion, his change, was not lost on me. Then, out of nowhere, the world came to a screeching halt. At the risk of sounding like a total fucking psychopath, for me, the COVID-19 pandemic was a dream come true. I went from busting my ass 7 days a week just to get by to $1,200 a week without lifting a finger. Thanks to unemployment on steroids. Congress, I could just kiss you. God bless America. For the first time in my entire life, I wasn't worried about money. No more of this. No more of this. But plenty of this. During the pandemic, I wrote 2 books, Horror Ball about the 1973 Texas Rangers and Ugly Ball about the 1973 San Diego Padres, 2 of the worst teams in Major League Baseball history. But the coolest part of the pandemic was hanging out with this kid. I got this little peanut a guitar when she was 10 years old.
Darling, God, to let me know. Should I stay? Should I go?
People have no idea what we have to go through. When the world opened back up, I got to go to places I'd always dreamed of. Cork, Ireland, birthplace of my grandmother, Belfast and Dublin, with famed Irish author Aidan O'Reilly. 22 degrees. It's cold up here. Woo! From Tokyo Dome. Sayonara. Then Congress put the kibosh on unemployment on steroids, and money stopped falling from the sky. Damn you, Congress. My 18-month paid vacation was over, but I lucked out and got a limo gig at Ascot Limousine, which turned out to be the best limo gig I ever had. DraftKings CEO Jason Robbins was in town for the Super Bowl. I was at his beck and call all week long. One night at the Beverly Hilton, the strangest thing happened. Jason hopped in the Escalade. This wild-eyed kid with a crazy afro, dressed in a ratty t-shirt, shorts, and sandals, follows Jason into the Escalade. I really thought he was a homeless lunatic. Hey, Douglas, mind dropping my friend off? Sure, man, no problem. The wild-eyed kid looks at me, smiles, and says thanks. The two start talking. Do you know Mitch McConnell? No. You're gonna need Mitch McConnell. Don't worry, I'll get you a meeting with him. What about Pelosi? I've already met with Nancy. The drop is a few minutes away. The kid says thanks and hops out. As we drive away, Jason tells me that guy's worth billions. About a year later, I'm watching the news, and there's that wild-eyed kid with the crazy afro, Samuel Bankman-Fried. I picked up Claire at the Four Seasons in Beverly Hills. She was heading out to Miracles Treatment Center in Malibu, where millionaire junkie alkies from all over the world came to dry out. Everyone in the Southern California sober community knows about Miracles and its lavish treatments and therapies that only the super rich can afford. Claire lets on that she's going to see her billionaire alkie husband, Cliff. I let on that I've been clean and sober quite some time. That seemed to score major points with Claire. The lowly limo driver has been sober for years, but my billionaire husband can't stay off the sauce for a single day. We make it to Miracles. I wait in the parking lot as Claire visits Cliff and his recovery team. In no time at all, Claire gets back in the car and says, "Drive." What the fuck? He's got them blaming me for his drinking problem. I'm sorry to hear that, Claire. How can I help? Claire says, "Take me to Nordstrom's." By the time we got back to the Four Seasons, Claire had poured out her soul to me. Flying on private jets, shopping at places like Prada and Rodeo Drive, dining at the finest restaurants in the world wasn't all it's cracked up to be. I'm back at my place working on a novel that would become LA Limousine. Claire calls. She wants me to come back to the Four Seasons and come upstairs to her room. Okay, Claire, I'm on my way. Let's just say nature took its course, and the next morning I walked out of the Four Seasons knowing I'd made a very big mistake.
Rick, don't make me live without you.
Claire gave me a taste of my own medicine.
Rick, come back! Rick! Rick, come back!
Though I was far more discreet, Claire was out of my life in a matter of days. But she will live forever in the pages of LA Limousine and in my movie Wreck as well. I got invited to a barbecue at Mar Vista Park, just a few blocks from my place. And guess who I saw there? Jennifer. She sat down right next to me. Hi, Jennifer. She totally fucking ignored me. Then she got up and walked away. What a surprise. Later that night, I texted her. The next day, Morgan calls. "Douglas, Jennifer says you've been leaving her obscene messages again." Huh? What? Jennifer says you were leaving her obscene messages when she was teaching your daughter, and you left her another one last night. I just could not allow Jennifer to reduce me to the role of obscene message leaver when the truth was so different.
Fucking asshole!
I made sure that the real Jennifer knew that my side of the story was in the world too. My sister Judy called to tell me that my dad was very ill and that I should fly back to Florida to say goodbye. Thankfully, pleasant thoughts of my dad dominated my memories in his final hours. Taking me to Yankee Stadium when I was just a little boy and somehow arranging it so that I could wander on the field before the game. I met Roy White in the outfield. My dad instilled in me a love for baseball that brings me joy till this very day. My dad used to take me for rides on the subway, which I absolutely loved. When I got caught breaking into houses, my dad made me watch Scared Straight on TV and introduced me to his cop friends too. My life of crime ended that day. Yeah, my dad did some really fucked up things, but I'd rather remember him in his later years. Farewell, Dad. I love you and I miss you. And thanks for everything you did for me while you were here. I'm driving this TV exec to LAX. He tells me about this new app, Tinder, and all the success he's having on it. I get home and start scrolling. Holy shit, there's Annette from the sobriety center. Hey Annette, it's me, Doug. Want to get a cup?
Definitely.
Me and Annette were together for 2 years. For the first time in my life, I treated a woman with dignity and respect. And the results were amazing. And then one day, Annette called to say that she'd met someone her age. And just like that, she was gone. Guess who wanted to come out to play? But there was just no way I was going down that road again. I thought about Fonte, and I knew what he would say. Thank God for your time with Annette, and right. I continued working on a collection of short stories that turned out to be not suitable for children. And Annette married her new fella and started a family. And the coolest thing is, when I see Annette at the sobriety center, she hugs me. Ascot was really working out. I'd spend my days at private jet strips, picking up the rich and famous, and ferrying them to whatever five-star hotel they were staying at, or sometimes just taking them back to the palatial estates in LA that they called home. The money was great too. I had more money in the bank than I ever dreamed of. Aaron, the guy who owned the company, was the coolest guy ever. There was just no way I could reward his kindness by pitching rec to his clients. Besides, by now I realized pitching clients when they got on the limb just didn't work. I will not pitch my screenplay. My friend Neil was a screenwriter too. We'd constantly be brainstorming on how to get something we'd written made. It was Neil who told me about Sean Baker and the movie he made on his cell phone, Tangerine. Around that time I read an article where Steven Spielberg said, thanks to cell phones, anyone could make a movie. I got a cell phone. Rec took about a year to make and cost just over $5,000. One night, I was driving Danny DeVito, and I came this close to asking him to say, thanks for the ride, Rec, when he got out of the car. I still kind of regret that I didn't. Rec is available on YouTube for anyone who wants to watch it. What a surprise! I wrote a book about the making of Rec. It's called How I Made a Movie on My Cell Phone. It's available on Amazon.com for just $10. At the very start, I posed this question.
So what happened? How'd I get here? Cold, old, and all alone, an anonymous literary failure, nary a pot to piss in, creditors and the IRS breathing down my neck? It's a good question, but the answer's a little complicated.
Actually, the answer is very simple. From Louann Fernald in 1979, to Show World in the early 80s, to the age of the VCR, and the TV VCR, and Big Yellow on Lincoln Boulevard in LA, to high-speed internet access to all the pornography in the world. Maybe due to all the unresolved childhood trauma that God knows I spent a lifetime trying to resolve. Maybe due to the hypnotizing effect that porn holds over so many millions of men. Maybe due to just pure primal desire. Maybe due to the neurological transformation that keeps me so fucking numb. The time and energy I've spent swimming across this endless sea of porn, and all the love that I destroyed, and all the novels, and all the screenplays, and the original comedy series that I've written, and all the baseball books I've written too, and all the places in the world I've been. I just could not free myself from porn. At least, not yet.